Do you have any way to anticipate how long you think the count is going to take after all the ballots in person and mail-in arrive?
Yeah, so it's actually just basic math. How long does it take to count 10 ballots and then multiply that out by the 3 million or more that we expect to receive from voters across the state this fall? And we know already from the August primary where 1.6 million citizens voted by mail that it took until about Wednesday night. In some communities, it wasn't until late on Wednesday until the full results were able to be reported. Now we're trying to make some changes because what we know is probably twice the number of people who voted by mail in our August primary will vote by mail in November. So that means we'd need twice the time to count those ballots, which takes us to Friday night as when we can expect that all to be done. Now, no one wants us to be in a position where we're counting for 3 days after the polls close. And so we're trying to, number one, ask the legislature to enable us to prepare ballots to be counted prior to Election Day. Right now, we can't start even opening envelopes until that morning. That's the biggest thing that could help us if they make that change. But in the absence of any action there, we've also increased the number of people and machines that most communities will have at their disposal to count these ballots beginning Election Day, in the hope that we can count them more efficiently and quickly than ever before, with an eye towards security and accuracy always, but hopefully deliver those results even sooner.
Okay. I had someone ask me on Twitter yesterday, or on Monday, and I tagged you on it, but it was a late Labor Day. You were probably at a barbecue. They wondered if whether or not you had waived the witness signature requirement for a mail-in ballot, because I heard they did it in Minnesota. Is that something we're doing here, or have you considered that?
We do not have the same requirement.
Okay.
There is no witness signature as it is in other states. Citizens can they do have to sign the ballot envelope that they return their ballot in, and that signature is then matched. But there's no notary requirement or anything on that signature.
That is one of the things that's leading me into this story. I'm sure you saw this out of Georgia. The state says 1,000 people are being investigated for apparently voting twice during the primary, once in mail, once in person. I read the article, and it said it's likely not malice, it is confusion on the part of the voters. So are you concerned about voter disenfranchisement because people aren't going to get this right? And what are we doing? Obviously, we have a role here in the news as well to educate people as much as possible about this, on how to do it properly.
Right. I mean, number one, we don't want anyone voting twice. That would be breaking the law, whether you do it accidentally or intentionally. Number two, there are protections in place to ensure that citizens only have one vote, and that is in part because we in Michigan have a statewide voter file that is updated in real time with every voter's interaction. When you request your ballot to be sent to you, it's noted in the file. When we receive your ballot back, it is noted in the file. When your ballot is counted, it's noted in the file. And then now, for the first time ever, we have, in some ways, through a system called Ballot Scout, been able to make that tracking available to our citizens. So you can go to michigan.gov/vote and track whether your ballot request has been received, whether your ballot has been sent to you, and whether it's been, once you return it, received by the clerk. Now, if you do that and you see there's no ballot yet returned to your clerk, even if you've mailed it in, you have the option to go in person to your clerk's office until 4 o'clock on Monday and say, I don't know if you received my ballot, so I want to vote now in person just to make sure you get it. If you do that, we will simply invalidate whatever previous ballot was sent to you and and make that new ballot your vote. And so, there's provisions like that in place to ensure if someone does try to replace their vote or invalidate their ballot, that we can track that. And that's really the key factor in making sure no one inadvertently votes twice.
You covered a lot of ground for me in that one question. I'm going to ask you this one anyway. There are a lot of people screaming mail-in voting opens itself to fraud. You already covered some of it, but what can you tell a skeptical voter about the safeguards that you maybe not have already mentioned that are in place to prevent fraud from mail-in voting?
Well, we have the benefit of not being the first state to allow citizens the right to vote by mail. And because of that, we've been able to bring in the time-tested security protections that states who've been allowing citizens to vote by mail for decades have honed and perfected over time. Most importantly, it's the signature check. Every voter, before you even can request a ballot to be sent to you, you have to sign an application. That request signature is then matched with the signature we have on file for you that confirms your identity. And that just gets you the ballot. And then once you get the ballot and return it, that ballot is not even prepared to be counted until we validate the signature on your signature on the envelope outside that ballot. If there is a ballot returned with no signature, we can't count it. If there's a ballot returned with a signature envelope that doesn't match the file, what we have on file, we can't count it. That protection is a way of confirming the identity of the voter prior to opening the ballot and counting it, and ensures that we, like other states in the country, are able to have a vote by mail system that is protected against fraud.
Okay, this next question is a little bit political, but I saw the other day the Colorado Secretary of State said she would consider referring criminal charges against the president to that state's AG because of his suggestions to people that they vote twice. Would you, have you, or are you considering something similar?
My focus is on the voters of Michigan. Every voter, regardless of who they vote for, and making sure their voices are heard and making sure the system's preserved and secured. So my focus is making sure voters know that if you vote twice, it's illegal, and we will, as the Attorney General in Michigan has said, pursue enforcement of all voting laws this year vigorously. That said, we don't want voters to be making a mistake. We know this is a new system. Many people, several 100,000 of citizens in our state, perhaps even over 1 million citizens, will be voting by mail for the first time this November. And so I'm focused on making sure those voters know all the information they need to know to ensure their votes are cast and counted accurately. We know there's a lot of political rhetoric that's going to be flowing in the state and part of this ecosystem in the weeks ahead. I try to block out a lot of that noise and just focus on telling voters what they need to know in order to have their vote counted.
Last question, and I will let you go. We have seen in other areas around the country where a large number of mail-in votes have been spoiled because of some technicality, like people not signing the ballot or the envelope, as you just mentioned. And we talked about how we are working on educational components to that, but how worried are you that we are going to see a larger voter franchise, a larger percentage of voters disenfranchised this cycle because so many are going to be doing mail-in voting?
I am very concerned that because many citizens will be voting by mail for the first time, because there's these new uncertainties with the Postal Service and historic levels of misinformation flowing into our state, confusing voters about their rights this year, that many things will happen outside the voters' control that may lead to their vote not being counted. So our goal between now and Election Day is to continue to proactively educate voters about their options to vote this year, how to ensure their vote is counted, how to track their ballot if they vote through the mail or at one of our secure drop boxes, and to do everything we can to ensure voters have faith in the process as well. But again, the newness of all of this, the fact that many people are voting by mail for the first time, does create the challenge of making sure people know your ballot under current law needs to be received by 8 p.m. on election night. You can drop it off at your local drop box by 8 p.m. on election night to ensure that it's counted. But we are not like many other states that says as long as you mail it prior to election day, it will still count. Similarly, if people forget to sign the envelope, we don't require currently clerks to follow up with the voter to confirm their identity or identify any irregularities. I've asked the legislature to update our laws on both fronts to ensure that voters who vote on time have their ballots counted even if they're received the day after election day, and that if voters make a mistake, that clerks follow up with them to try to correct that mistake before discarding their ballot. So my hope is we can get those legislative changes in place in time for November. But either way, voters also have to be vigilant this year to know the rules, to ensure their vote counts, and to ask a question of your local clerk if you have any questions at all as the process moves forward.